the Outer Banks of North Carolina was very different for us.
Yeah.
So this video is going to be a little different than what we normally do. It's actually going to probably be it's going to be a series.
More than a video. This is the introduction to a series, because it was 6 days, 3 campgrounds. The Outer Banks was the bulk of it, but it was a lot. The Outer Banks is a lot.
It's a lot.
We could go again in 3 weeks and see a whole nother week's worth of stuff.
Exactly. What we're going to do for this first video is kind of talk about kind of our planning and how we wound up putting this trip together. And then we'll do some others on like what we actually did and the campgrounds that we stayed at and whatnot. So it started back, I think it's probably around February when I realized.
February. We didn't have, we've been so focused on our summer trip that I was like, what are we doing spring break?
Yeah, I was like, oh. So we looked around at some of the South Carolina state parks that we really like, and they were all pretty booked up. We could piece them together and kind of hop around, but we really didn't want to do that. We wanted to try and find something different. And I remember a couple years ago, some friends of ours rented a camper and did spring break at the Outer Banks. So I decided to look and see what kind of campgrounds were available, and I was shocked at how many sites were available at the Outer Banks.
Lots of options.
Well, I didn't realize that's kind of the shoulder season for the Outer Banks. It seems like the summer is when it's really rocking and rolling.
Well, I mean, we saw a lot of things that opened like late April.
Right.
And maybe that like college, when the college kids get out and can come work, or.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not really sure. But we looking at all the different campground options. I opted to go with the KOA in Hatteras. It's actually
the KOA Hatteras in Rodanthe.
Right, it's actually in Rodanthe. There's another Hatteras campground right next door. There's some private campgrounds down near Cape Hatteras, actually in the city of Buxton. There was several throughout the entire stretch. The reason I chose that KOA was, one, it was fairly affordable.
And there seemed to be a lot of things to do, and it was kind of in the middle of the stuff we wanted to do.
Right, that was the biggest thing. Is in the middle. I knew that we wanted to do the Wright Brothers Museum. We wanted to do Cape Hatteras Lighthouse.
Well, the Cape Hatteras Seashore, which is an historic or a national park, really, it encompasses several lighthouses and almost a lot of that shoreline.
So it was kind of a central hub. Now, one thing that our friends did that we did not do is they started up at the top.
And they camped in several places.
Right, they progressively worked their way down. I think either one of those ways will work. The drawback to the way we did it was we spent a lot of time in the car riding up, because it's a good hour and a half from the top to the very bottom of the Outer Banks. So we wound up doing a lot of driving.
But it's gorgeous. So, and honestly, if we think about set up and pack up like we do on a normal campsite, but honestly, because of the time of year and the weather that was coming, we really didn't have as much set up outside as we normally like. I didn't even unpack my new tablecloths because it was so windy or wet or cold.
Yeah, it's one of the, and that was one of the things that also was a little different in planning and preparing for this. I knew there was no sense in taking the pop-up canopy to put over the picnic table. We weren't going to be able to use it with the wind, so I took it out of the camper. I didn't want to haul that weight. I knew I needed to do some maintenance in the camper, so I took this opportunity a couple weeks ago to take it to a guy to get the roof cleaned and get a UV seal on it. He went ahead and checked the brakes, adjusted the brakes on the camper, and pulled the bearings off and repacked the bearings, which I'm actually very fortunate that one of the bearings had started to separate, so he went ahead and put all new bearings on the camper. I'm very thankful, because we could have lost a wheel. Those are maintenance kind of things that need to be done. It wasn't done just because of this trip, but
it was good to be. It was kind of the catalyst.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and we also, that was like just preparing for. We had to look at the weather, not just for what we were packing for our clothes and for our things, but also for like the travel on the Outer Banks. We'll talk about this some more when we go down to Ocracoke, but like some of those roads closed because of weather, because of flooding, because of high tides, and weather is a huge factor when you're planning an Outer Banks trip.
Yes, absolutely. And I started watching the weather about 2 weeks out. When I first started seeing it, I saw that Wednesday was going to be the worst day, and it was really the only day that was rainy. It turned out not to be as bad as what they had predicted that it was going to be, but it was windy throughout, and they had predicted wind throughout. It's the Outer Banks. I mean,
there's a reason that the Wright brothers chose it. It is windy,
and
like you can't describe it. You ain't been. I mean, when you're like, oh, the beach is windy.
It's a different kind of wind.
Different.
One of the things that I was unprepared for was how to cook in that kind of wind. I have some dollar store scrapers that I hang on the side of the Blackstone. I've got 3 of them that I've always carried with me. Those 3 can protect the sides and the back, and it has always worked. It wasn't enough for this one. I had to go get a couple more. I wound up getting 3 more so they go all the way around the back and sides, and I had to use aluminum foil on the front just to try and block the wind. When I use my butane cooker to boil water, I had to put aluminum foil around it because that wind it just changes the thing.
We watched somebody else setting up there. I don't know if it was a Blackstone, but some kind of outdoor cooking thing. And they were wrapping tinfoil around it, and then the wife rolled out tinfoil and just stood there, like trying to block the wind. I mean, it's like it comes from every direction. Because the sound is, especially where we were. And one thing I did really like about the KOA Hatteras is that we were on, the campground was on the beach side, so you could walk over to the beach. But there wasn't anything between us and the sound side. Like, they own the sound property too, so you could see it from both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, from where we were, it was a skinny enough piece that you literally could, look at the sunset in the morning and walk over and then just be standing in your hillside and see the sunset on the sound, which was spectacular.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that that kind of caught me by surprise about the Outer Banks was that there are places where it's probably
real narrow.
It's probably not 4 or 5 roads wide. You got dunes on one side, maybe a little bit of a dune on the sound side, and that's it. It gets very narrow in some places, and there's a couple places where it gets so narrow, the road goes off on a bridge to go around. It's not like, I don't know, I guess I was envisioning it to look more like Myrtle Beach.
Or
like
have
the strip.
Yeah, or even Hunting Island. You don't necessarily see them both at the same time.
Right. But it was a lot more, and that's where that seashore comes in.
The phrase that they say is, well, that's life living on a sand dune.
Yeah, sandbar.
Sandbar,
yeah. And that's really what it is. So, and that, I think kind of one of the things I want to make sure if you've never been, you kind of understand the way that the stretch at the layout is anywhere where there's room, where it gets wider. That's where they put the villages. And there's various different villages as you go on. All the way up to the top, there's Duck. That's where
there's Kill Devil Hills.
There's Kill Devil Hills. There's
and Kitty Hawk.
And then Nag's Head. I think Nag's Head's probably the biggest. As you come off of the bridge from Roanoke, that's where you come in, is into Nag's Head. You can turn north and you go up to the more touristy. That is a little bit more like what we think of as Myrtle Beach.
Just beach.
Just beach in general.
And they even say, like, I was reading through all the literature and the material, like the Hatteras end is more, because it does have the seashore and like Pea Island Wildlife Refuge and some of those things. It's more of the outdoorsy stuff. All those restaurants are individually, separately owned. There's not a whole lot of chain stuff in there.
You won't find fast food. You won't find...
And you won't find, like, even really grocery stores. A lot of the gas stations are, like, kind of grocery, gas, tourist stuff combo.
As you work your way down these villages, they get a little more eclectic the further south you go. You can tell where we stayed at Rodanthe, it looks like maybe they've kind of fallen on some hard times over the last couple of years. One of the things that I thought about was, I imagine the storms that happen there impact these villages a lot.
And they really make or break somebody. I mean, if you were kind of operating on a margin and enjoying that you lived at the beach, and then a storm wiped out like your good season,
right?
Like,
yeah,
you can't recover. It'd be hard to recover from
right.
that.
So, it was a neat experience. Whoa, hello there. To understand all those different little villages. That's one thing, if we get a chance to go back, I really want to explore more of the villages. We really were so busy trying to hit all the national park things.
But there's so much to see. You really kind of have to decide. Like, and I would say too, when you're planning, while the online stuff is good, try to stop in when you first go onto the island. Stop at, there's several visitor centers,
right.
Or even just one of those like general store kind of places, and get there was Outer Banks Today magazine. There was Hatteras Today. I think they're all operated by the same people. There's a really good brochure about Hatteras. There's a good brochure about Ocracoke. Like, those things really would help you plan, because not only did it talk about the historic stuff to do, but there was a whole bunch on the unique stores, the artists, the restaurants, with a lot of good information. And so I think that kind of stuff would have been more beneficial if we had it. We ended up kind of getting it along the week.
Right.
And even last night I was reading some as we were, already halfway into North Carolina, and I was like, oh, well, that would have been kind of cool to go check that store out instead of this one that we popped in, whatever.
I bet you if you call the Chamber of Commerce, they'll mail you some of that stuff too.
I don't know.
Doesn't hurt to call.